Hello, and welcome back to Human Evolution. Today what we want to do is talk about mammals, and a little bit about how mammals evolved, like what are some of the milestones, and then of course, what does it mean to be a mammal, because we live in the age of mammals, and that's pretty exciting. But it turns out that of course mammals have been around a lot longer than the age of mammals, and that's one of the things we want to figure out. But first, when we talk about the class Mammalia, and I have put down here a link, right, to the Animal Diversity Web that actually talks about all the mammals. It's about 500. Let's try that again. It's about 5,400 species. Now, mammals are actually one of the most diverse groups because mammals inhabit every continent and they're found pretty much in every terrestrial biome to some degree. They can range in size, and I'm talking about extant species right here on these sizes. They can range in size from 1 inch to 100 feet. That is ridiculous, right? So that's a like a 10-story building is what that is. From your thumb, half your thumb, to the size of a 10-story building. Crazy. Now, it turns out that there are actually somewhere over 20 orders, and how many exactly is debatable, but there are 18 living or extant orders and around 5,000 species alive, okay? Now, rodents are the largest of the taxa, so I've just highlighted some of the taxa here, and you can kind of tell some of these things, their age a little bit based on the number of species that they have, because remember that means that they've had longer to split. Yeah, so rodents, about 1,700 species. For those of you that like mice and rats, enjoy that. Bats, there are almost 1,000 of those, one of my personal favorites. And then there are only about 180 primates. We are not the third largest group, by the way. There's some other groups in there, but that's the one that we're going to be interested in next time. Okay, if you are a mammal, you will have mammary glands, hair. You will be endothermic, which means you regulate your temperature yourself, not the environment. You probably know that word already. Warm-blooded is what that is. A diaphragm that allows you to open your lungs, right? A 4-chambered heart, 3 middle ear bones. The lower jaw, your mandible, is a single bone. You have 2 sets of teeth. You have baby teeth, which are actually called milk teeth for obvious reasons, and adult teeth. Those are the ones that you get after the tooth fairy visits you. And then heterodonty, we have specialized teeth, whereas a lot, like reptiles don't, for instance. They all have those little peg teeth, and sharks, they're all the same. Okay, here's your first question. Why isn't internal development on the list of mammal characters? I mean, mammals, we think, typically are going to either be internal or in a pouch, right? So it is. I just forgot to put it there. It's ancestral to mammals. Mammals don't develop internally. Or some mammals lay eggs. Well, I just told you that C was wrong, so there you go. And while I do forget to put things in places occasionally, that's not the answer. It's not actually ancestral to mammals. Mammals are the internal developers in terms of not having eggs, right, that kind of hatch inside. We actually do develop inside, but not all mammals do that, okay? There are some mammals that lay eggs, and those mammals are called monotremes, and they're going to come up in the next slide. So, mammals really appear about 210 million years ago during the Jurassic period, and the earliest mammals were tiny, probably about 1 inch long, right, like our tiniest mammals today. They were probably insectivorous monotremes, right, our egg layers, and they're probably nocturnal, and this is very much like what one of those little early guys would have looked like, okay? This. Wow, that was crazy talk. This is what one of those little early guys would have looked like. This is a paperclip, so adorable and cute and tiny. This is a cynodont, okay? And so this is a mammal-like reptile, probably has hair, yeah, and this is probably our common ancestor there, what we evolved from, and then they evolved from therapsids, okay, and that's this group, and you can see these guys over here. So, now, recent evidence actually suggests that marsupial and placental mammals evolved around 120 million years ago, although there is some really new genetic evidence that's showing about 175 million years ago. There's a little bit of argument about that, so we're going to go with the 120 date. Fun fact, the oldest extant group of mammals evolved 110 million years ago in Africa, just before Africa broke off from the big continent Gondwana, and they are called the Afrotheres, and they give rise, that group gives rise to elephants, aardvarks, manatees, and hyraxes. If you don't know what a hyrax is, look it up. They are adorable and not adorable at the same time. Okay, so the big thing that helps us out, we're here a long time. We're tiny. We're living alongside dinosaurs, mostly at night, where we don't get eaten by dinosaurs so much. So what happens to make us the king of the road, right? We really come into our own when the dinosaurs go extinct, right? The KT extinction, you have that big comet, whatever, asteroid, that impacts in the Yucatan Peninsula, okay? And that is what wipes out the dinosaurs, right? Along with lots and lots of other animals, actually, and organisms in general, plants, all sorts of things. That impact is huge, right? And you can see it on a map, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And we did talk about it already when we talked about extinctions. You can see that giant crater. That would have made, just in the very beginning, a 500-foot tsunami. That is ridiculous. That is a 50-foot story building straight up of water. And it would have resulted in radical climate change because of all of the dust and debris that was thrown up into the atmosphere. And so this would have caused massive, massive changes. So mammals survive. That's great. But how do we do it, right? Which trait would be the most helpful for us surviving that mass extinction? Hair, mammary glands, endothermy, diphyodonty, or the diaphragm? Well, this is an interesting question. I mean, all of these things are really helpful to us in general, but it probably was endothermy. And the reason is that allows us to regulate our temperature, as we talked about, internally, not relying on the environment. And so it doesn't really matter how hot or how cold it is. We can maintain a temperature. Mammals can maintain their temperature. And that would have been extremely helpful when you're talking about having vacillating global temperatures. Okay. So when you start looking at where we come from, right, here are the cynodonts, here are the therapsids, and you can see that we've got this split here, okay, and then we've got this split here, and then we get monotremes first, and then marsupials and placental mammals evolve around the same time, more or less, okay, and they're the therians, yeah. Now, prosimians, these are the earliest of the primates, and there are lots of extant species of prosimians today, and we'll talk about these more. We're going to talk about the actual primates and their evolution in detail in the next conversation, so this is going to be pretty fast. Yeah? Okay, so we are undergoing adaptive radiation around 55 million years ago. We know we've been around for for a long time before that. But this adaptive radiation is occurring in all of the groups of mammals. Obviously, we're focusing on primates, but out of all of the mammals, none of them are larger than about a pig up until about 55 million years ago, and then things go crazy, and we get all kinds of different sizes and body shapes and different food sources that are being exploited, and that, of course, is the definition of adaptive radiation. Now, many of these prosimians actually become extinct around 40 to 35 million years ago when monkeys evolve, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later on. But what you do need to know, and this should say Oligocene epoch, I'll fix that. What you do need to know is that most of Africa is a tropical forest at the time. And this is great because this allows for all of these wonderful little arboreal guys to be hanging out. And again, we'll talk about that more later on. Now, apes appear around 23 million years ago, right, during the Miocene epoch. And the apes, interestingly enough, in the fossil records, we have very few monkeys and prosimians from this time and tons of apes, but then monkeys really start to reappear, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but I thought that'd be fun for you to know. Okay, now when you put it all together, this is kind of what you get. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on the hominids, okay, and actually hominins is a word we're going to be using, but I do want you to understand where everybody is. Here are the prosimians, your tarsiers, lemurs, and lorises. This is actually lorises is the name of the group here. And then you've got your New World monkeys, your Old World monkeys, and Old World monkeys are the ones that give rise to the apes, and then eventually, we come from that lineage. And so Old World monkeys, that's really all we're going to talk about. New World monkeys, on the other hand, are cool because they do all sorts of fun things. Not that Old World monkeys aren't, but anyway, we'll talk about those all more later on. Okay, so that is it for this conversation. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will see you next time.